Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching stars streak past the view screen. The Deep Space Patrol had been quiet for 3 weeks, too quiet. His crew was getting restless, and Morrison could feel the tension in the recycled air. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Kate Williams from the communications station. "Incoming priority transmission from Earth Command." Morrison walked over to her station. Kate was young but sharp. She had joined his crew 6 months ago and quickly proved herself reliable. "Put it through to my ready room," he said. The ready room was small but comfortable. Morrison had served on larger ships, but the Liberty felt like home. He pressed the secure communication button and Admiral Frank Parker's weathered face appeared on the screen. "Jake, we have a problem," Parker said without greeting. "The Galactic Council has issued a formal summons. They want you in a delegation." "To appear before the Supreme Tribunal?" Morrison frowned. "What are the charges?" "Excessive military expansion and disruption of established trade routes," Parker read from a datapad. "They're saying we violated the expansion accords of 2387. That's ridiculous. We've followed every treaty rule to the letter." Parker's expression was grim. "I know. But they're not interested in facts right now. The alien coalition has been pushing for this for months. They want to make an example of us." Morrison sat down heavily in his chair. He had feared this day would come. Human colonies had been expanding rapidly across the outer rim. Other species were getting nervous about human growth and influence. "Who's backing this?" Morrison asked. "The usual suspects. The Thraxians are leading the charge with support from the Kaleri and Zephyrians. Even some of the neutral species are siding with them." Morrison thought about the recent attacks on human settlements. 3 colonies had been raided in the past 2 months. The Council had done nothing to help. Now they were blaming humans for defending themselves. "When do I need to be there?" 2 weeks. "I'm sending you the full details now." "Jake, I want you to know that Earth Command is behind you completely. But we can't afford a war with the entire Council." The transmission ended, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts. He called for his senior staff to meet in the briefing room. 20 minutes later, his key officers gathered around the rectangular table. Lieutenant Commander Amy Watson, his diplomatic advisor, was the first to speak. "This could be a trap, Captain. If they wanted justice, they would have sent investigators, not a summons." Dr. Lisa Brooks, the ship's science officer and xenobiologist, nodded in agreement. "The timing is suspicious. 3 alien species just signed new trade agreements that specifically exclude human territories." Commander Ryan Hayes, Morrison's tactical officer, leaned forward. "Our intelligence reports show increased alien fleet movements near our border colonies. They're positioning for something." Morrison looked at each of his officers. These people had served with him for years. They trusted him, and he trusted them. "I've made my decision. We're going to answer this summons, sir, with respect. That could be exactly what they want," Amy said. "Once we're in their territory, we're at their mercy. If we don't go, they'll claim we're guilty and take action anyway," Morrison replied. "At least this way we get to present our side of the story." Dr. Brooks pulled up a holographic display showing the route to Nexus Prime. "The journey will take us through neutral space for most of the trip. The last 3 systems are controlled by Council forces." Morrison studied the route. "How long to reach Nexus Prime?" 8 days at maximum warp," Ryan answered. "But we'll need to travel slowly once we enter Council space." "They'll want to escort us." Morrison made his choice. "Amy, I want you to select a diplomatic team. Lisa, prepare detailed files on every species we'll be dealing with. Ryan, choose a security detail, but keep it small. We don't want to appear aggressive." "What about backup?" Ryan asked. "If something goes wrong?" "We'll be on our own," Morrison said. "Earth Command can't risk sending a fleet into Council space. This is a diplomatic mission." Over the next 3 days, the team prepared for the journey. Morrison chose his delegation carefully. Amy Watson would handle diplomatic protocol. Dr. Brooks would provide cultural expertise and scientific analysis. Ryan Hayes would manage security and military strategy. Charles Newman, a veteran diplomat who had joined them from Earth, would lead the formal negotiations. Morrison spent hours reviewing the charges. The council claimed humans had built too many military bases, expanded too quickly into disputed territories, and damaged local ecosystems. But Morrison knew the real story was different. The Kaleri had been attacking human supply ships for months. The Thraxians had blockaded 3 human trade routes without warning. The Zephyrians had refused to help when the colony on New Texas was hit by a plague, even though human medical teams had saved thousands of Zephyrian lives the year before. "Captain," Kate Williams called over the intercom, "we're receiving another transmission from Admiral Parker." Morrison took the call in his ready room. Parker looked even more tired than before. "Jake, I have some new information." "Our intelligence. Sources say the council has already made their decision. This trial is just for show." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of decision?" "They want to force us back to Earth's solar system. Complete withdrawal from all outer colonies. They're also demanding massive reparations for supposed damages. And if we refuse? Military action. They're calling it a peacekeeping operation, but our analysts think they're planning a full invasion." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. Millions of human civilians lived in the outer colonies. They had built homes, started families, and created new lives on distant worlds. The council wanted to abandon them all. "Admiral, are you ordering me to accept their terms?" Parker was quiet for a long moment. "No, Jake, I'm ordering you to represent humanity with honor. Whatever decision you make out there, Earth will stand behind it." The transmission ended. Morrison sat alone, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. In a few days, he would stand before the most powerful court in the galaxy. The future of human expansion, maybe even human survival, would depend on what happened in that courtroom. He thought about his daughter Sarah, living on the colony world of New California. She was a teacher, helping to educate the next generation of human pioneers. If the council got their way, she would lose everything she had worked for. Morrison stood up and looked out the small porthole in his ready room. The stars looked the same as always, but everything had changed. Humanity was about to face its greatest challenge since leaving Earth. "Computer, ship-wide announcement," he said. "This is Captain Morrison. In 4 days we will arrive at Nexus, primed to answer charges brought by the Galactic Council. I want every crew member to understand what we're fighting for. We're not just defending policies or treaties. We're defending the right of humans to live freely among the stars. Whatever happens, we will face it together." Morrison turned off the communication system and began preparing for the most important mission of his life. The USS Liberty dropped out of warp at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the massive space station grow larger on the viewscreen. The Galactic Court was unlike anything he had ever seen. The station was shaped like a giant crystal, its surface reflecting the light from the system's twin suns. Thousands of ships from dozens of species surrounded it like metal insects around a glowing flower. Some ships were sleek and elegant, others looked like living creatures with organic curves. "Incoming transmission from Station Control, Lieutenant," Kate Williams announced. A holographic image appeared above the communications console. The being that materialized had blue skin, 4 arms, and large black eyes. Morrison recognized the species as Altarian. "Human vessel, USS Liberty, you are cleared for Docking Bay 7. A security escort will guide you. Please follow all protocols and maintain peaceful intentions." "Acknowledged, Nexus Control," Morrison replied. "We come in peace to answer the Council's summons." The escort ships were small but heavily armed. Morrison counted at least 20 vessels surrounding the Liberty as they approached the docking bay. Amy Watson stood beside him, studying her data. "Pad, Captain, I've reviewed the protocol files. We'll be met by a tribunal clerk who will escort us to temporary quarters. The trial begins tomorrow at what they call third cycle." Dr. Brooks looked up from her console. "That's roughly equivalent to 10 in the morning, Earth time. I've been monitoring their communication channels." "There's a lot of excitement about this trial," Morrison frowned. What kind of excitement? The bad kind? Many species see this as their chance to put humans in their place. Some are calling it the trial of the century. The Liberty settled into the docking bay with a soft thud. Morrison gathered his delegation in the shuttle bay. Amy Watson carried the diplomatic files. Dr. Brooks had her cultural analysis data. Commander Ryan Hayes wore his dress uniform but kept his hand near his sidearm. Charles Newman looked calm despite the circumstances. Remember, Morrison told his team, we represent all of humanity today. Stay professional, stay alert, and stick to the facts. The airlock opened with a hiss. The station's atmosphere was thicker than Earth normal, with a slight metallic taste. A tall, thin alien with gray skin and no visible eyes waited for them. Morrison recognized the species as Nexari, the traditional peacekeepers of the Council. I am Clerk Voxtel. You will follow me to your quarters. You have 4 hours to prepare for tomorrow's proceedings. They walked through corridors filled with aliens of every description. Morrison saw beings that looked like walking trees, creatures covered in scales that shifted color, and others that seemed to be made of living metal. All of them stopped to stare at the human delegation. They're not exactly rolling out the welcome. Matt, Amy whispered. The quarters were small but comfortable. Morrison called his team together in the main room. All right, let's review what we know. What are we facing tomorrow? Charles Newman spread out his files on the table. The prosecution will be led by Councillor Vexmar of the Thraxian Republic. He's known for his aggressive tactics and his hatred of human expansion, Dr. Brooks added her analysis. The Thraxians are a warrior culture. They respect strength but see diplomacy as weakness. Vexmar will try to make us look like cowards or liars. What about the judges? Morrison asked. High Arbiter Zexthel will preside, Amy replied. She's from the Nexari species, supposedly neutral. But our intelligence suggests she's been influenced by anti-human propaganda. Morrison studied the charges again. Excessive military expansion, disruption of trade routes, violation of the expansion accords. These are serious accusations. All of them are lies or distortions, Ryan said. Every military base we built was in response to attacks. Every trade route we used was legally established. We followed every treaty to the letter. That may not matter, Charles warned. This court operates on consensus, not evidence. If enough council members want us found guilty, facts won't save us. The next morning, Morrison and his team entered the courtroom. The chamber was enormous, with seating for thousands of representatives from hundreds of species. The ceiling stretched high above them, displaying a holographic image of the galaxy. Morrison took his place at the defendant's table. The human delegation looked tiny in the vast space across from them. The prosecution table was crowded with alien lawyers and advisors. High Arbiter Zexthel entered through a side door. She was tall and imposing, with 6 arms and skin that seemed to glow with inner light. Her voice echoed through the chamber when she spoke. This tribunal is now in session. We are here to judge the actions of the human species regarding their expansion into galactic space. Councillor Vexmar, please present your case. Vexmar stood up slowly. He was massive, even for a Thraxian, with thick scales and glowing red eyes. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding metal. Honored Arbiter, fellow council members, we are here because humanity has become a cancer in our galaxy. They spread too fast, take too much, and give nothing back. Morrison felt his anger rising but forced himself to stay calm. Vexmar was just getting started. In the past 5 years, humans have established 47 new colonies. They have built 32 military bases in disputed space. They have disrupted trade routes that have existed for centuries. Vexmar activated a holographic display showing human territories. Red markers indicated the new colonies and bases. Look at this expansion. Look at how they grow like a disease, consuming everything in their path. The first witness was called. A Kaleri female with blue-green skin and fins instead of ears took the stand. She spoke in a high, musical voice. My name is Singing Water of Memories. I represent the displaced families of the Kaleri frontier worlds. When humans came to our region, they brought violence and chaos. Our peaceful communities were destroyed. Morrison watched as she described attacks and destruction. But he knew the real story. The Kaleri had been raiding human supply ships for months before any military action was taken. The humans had actually saved many Kaleri settlements from starvation. The next witness was a Thraxian military commander. He claimed that human forces had attacked Thraxian patrol ships without warning. Again, Morrison knew this was false. The Thraxian ships had been trying to blockade a human medical convoy. Witness after witness testified against humanity. They spoke of environmental damage, cultural contamination, and economic disruption. Some stories were exaggerated. Others were complete lies. Dr. Brooks leaned over to Morrison. They're presenting a completely false narrative. Every one of these accusations can be disproven. But Morrison could see that the audience was believing every word. The alien representatives nodded and whispered among themselves. Some showed obvious anger toward the human delegation. The most damaging testimony came from a Zephyrian diplomat named Skydancer of Clouds. She claimed that human forces had massacred Queller refugees who were seeking shelter on a neutral world. 200 innocent beings died because of human aggression, she said, her translucent wings trembling with emotion. Children, elders, families just trying to find safety. The humans showed no mercy. Morrison knew this was the biggest lie of all. The so-called refugees had been armed infiltrators trying to sabotage a human research station. The humans had actually rescued dozens of real Queller civilians from the infiltrators. Amy Watson was taking detailed notes. Captain, every one of these claims can be refuted with evidence. Will they listen to evidence? Morrison asked. Charles Newman looked around the courtroom. The alien representatives were clearly hostile. Some were making threatening gestures toward the human delegation. I don't think they want to hear our side of the story. Counselor Vexmar returned to his feet for closing arguments. Fellow council members, the evidence is clear. Humanity is a threat to galactic peace. They expand without permission, fight without provocation, and destroy without conscience. They must be stopped before they consume us all. The courtroom erupted in approval. Alien voices joined together in a chorus of agreement. Morrison could see the hatred in their eyes. This wasn't about justice. This was about fear. High Arbiter Zexthal called for order. The prosecution has presented its case. Tomorrow, the defense will have their chance to respond. This tribunal is adjourned until the next cycle. As the courtroom emptied, Morrison and his team sat in stunned silence. The accusations had been worse than they expected. The audience was clearly hostile. The judges seemed to have already made up their minds. Well, Morrison said quietly, now we know what we're really facing. Ryan Hayes looked around the nearly empty chamber. Captain, I don't think they plan to let us leave here alive. Morrison stood up slowly. Then we better make our defense count. Tomorrow we tell them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. Captain Morrison walked into the courtroom the next morning with his head held high. The alien representatives filled every seat, their hostile stares following his every move. He had spent most of the night reviewing evidence with his team. Today was humanity's chance to tell the truth. High Arbiter Zexthal struck her ceremonial gavel 3 times. The sound echoed through the massive chamber like thunder. This tribunal will now hear the defense presented by the human delegation. Captain Morrison, you may begin. Morrison stood up slowly. His blue uniform felt heavy under the weight of thousands of alien eyes. He walked to the center of the courtroom, where a small platform waited for speakers. Honored arbiter, respected council members, I stand before you today not as a conqueror or aggressor, but as a defender of innocent lives. Yesterday you heard many accusations against my species. Today I will show you the truth behind those accusations. Morrison activated his datapad. A holographic display appeared above the courtroom, showing star charts and ship movement records. Let me address the first charge. Excessive military expansion. Every human military base was built in response to attacks on our civilian populations. The display showed the timeline of events in the Kepler sector. 3 years ago, Kalari raiders attacked the colony ship New Hope. 67 civilians died, including 12 children. We built a defense station to protect future colony ships. This is not expansion, this is protection. Morrison could see some aliens shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The official records didn't match what they had been told yesterday. The prosecution claims we disrupted established trade routes. Let me show you what really happened. The holographic display changed to show shipping lanes and cargo manifests. The Thraxian Empire blockaded Route 7 without warning. Human medical supplies bound for the plague victims on Delta Colony were stopped. People died because medicine couldn't reach them. Dr. Brooks stood up and walked to Morrison's side. "If I may address the environmental damage accusations," she said. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's advanced sound system. "The prosecution claims humans destroyed the ecosystem on Kepler 4. Here are the actual environmental scans." The display showed before and after images of the planet. When humans arrived, the planet was dying from industrial pollution left by illegal Thraxian mining operations. Human terraforming technology actually saved the planet. Morrison watched as murmurs spread through the audience. Some aliens were clearly surprised by this information. Others looked angry that their false narrative was being challenged. Commander Ryan Hayes joined them at the platform. "I want to address the military accusations directly. The prosecution claims human forces attacked without provocation. Here are the tactical records from every engagement." The display showed ship positions and weapon signatures. In every case, human forces were either defending colonies under attack or responding to distress calls from civilian vessels. "We have never fired the first shot in any conflict." Morrison stepped forward again. "Let me tell you about the Queller refugee incident." The prosecution painted a picture of human soldiers massacring innocent families. Here is what actually happened. The holographic display showed the research station on Beta Prime. 43. Armed infiltrators disguised as refugees attempted to destroy a medical research facility. This facility was developing treatments for a disease that affects all species, including Queller civilians. Morrison's voice grew stronger as he continued. "When our security forces discovered the infiltrators, we found 62 real Queller refugees being held hostage. Human soldiers risked their lives to save those innocent beings. The infiltrators who died were armed combatants, not civilians." Amy Watson stood up with a datapad in her hand. "I want to address the cultural contamination charges. The prosecution claims humans destroy alien cultures wherever we go. The facts tell a different story." The display showed images of human colonies with alien residents. On 17 human worlds, alien communities live freely alongside human settlers. We have built schools that teach alien languages, hospitals that treat all species, and cultural centers that preserve alien traditions. Morrison looked directly at High Arbiter Zextel. "The prosecution speaks of human aggression and expansion, but they ignore the aid we have provided. When the Zephyrian homeworld was hit by solar storms, human relief ships were the first to arrive. When the Altarian plague threatened to wipe out their species, human doctors worked around the clock to find a cure." Charles Newman joined the defense team at the platform. His years of diplomatic experience showed in his calm, measured voice. "I have served as an ambassador for 30 years. I have seen how humans interact with other species. We do not seek to dominate or destroy. We seek to build, to grow, and to help." The veteran diplomat activated another display showing trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Humans have signed friendship treaties with 46 species. We have shared our technology freely. We have opened our markets to alien goods. This is not the behavior of an aggressive, expansionist species. Morrison felt the momentum shifting. Some aliens in the audience were nodding thoughtfully. The hostile atmosphere was slowly changing to one of uncertainty. "But I want to address the real issue here," Morrison continued. "This trial is not about our actions. It is about fear of change, fear of competition, Fear of a species that adapts quickly and thinks differently. Morrison's voice carried conviction as he spoke. Yes, humans expand rapidly. We explore new worlds because that is our nature. Yes, we build strong defenses because we have learned that peace requires strength. Yes, we change things wherever we go because we believe all beings deserve better. Lives, Dr. Brooks stepped forward with her final piece of evidence. The prosecution claims we have violated the expansion accords of 2387. Here is every human colony established since then, with the legal documentation for each one. The display showed hundreds of documents and approval certificates. Every colony was legally established under council law. Every settlement was approved by the appropriate authorities. Every expansion was documented and reported. Morrison looked around the courtroom. The alien representatives were clearly divided now. Some still showed hostility, but others seemed confused or uncertain. I want to tell you about my daughter. Sarah, Morrison said quietly. She lives on New California, one of our frontier colonies. She is a teacher. She helps alien children learn alongside human children. She tends a garden where earth flowers grow next to plants from 6 different worlds. Morrison's voice grew stronger. She represents what humanity really is. Not conquerors or destroyers, but builders and teachers and friends. The prosecution wants you to fear us because we are different. I ask you to judge us by our actions, not our differences. Commander Hayes presented the final piece of evidence. The prosecution claims our military presence threatens galactic peace. Here are the actual numbers. Human military forces make up less than 3% of all armed vessels in the galaxy. Our largest fleet has 30 ships. The Thraxian Empire alone has over 200. Morrison returned to the center of the platform. Members of this tribunal, I have shown you the truth behind every accusation. Humans are not perfect. We make mistakes. We sometimes act rashly to protect those we care about. But we are not the monsters the prosecution has painted us to be. The captain looked directly at Counselor Vexmar. The prosecution speaks of human expansion as if it were a disease. But growth and exploration are not crimes. They are the natural rights of all intelligent beings. Morrison's final words rang through the silent courtroom. We came to the galaxy not as conquerors but as neighbors. We have offered friendship to those who would accept it. We have defended ourselves against those who would harm us. And we have helped those who needed our aid. The captain returned to his seat. His team had presented their case clearly and forcefully. The evidence was overwhelming. But Morrison could see in the faces around him that evidence might not be enough. High Arbiter Zexthal called for a recess. As the aliens filed out of the courtroom, Morrison gathered his team around him. We did well, Amy said. Some of them are clearly having second thoughts. Dr. Brooks nodded. The environmental and medical evidence was particularly effective. Even the Thraxians looked surprised by some of it, but Morrison felt uneasy. Something in the Arbiter's expression bothered him. I don't think this was ever really about the evidence, he said quietly. I think they made their decision before we ever got here. Charles Newman looked around the empty courtroom. Then why have the trial at all? Morrison stood up slowly. Because they wanted to make it look legal. They wanted to say they gave us a fair chance before they destroyed us. Ryan Hayes checked his communicator. Captain, I'm getting reports of increased alien fleet activity near our colonies. Whatever they're planning, it's going to happen soon. Morrison felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. The trial had been a show. The real decision would be made by force, not by law. Tomorrow would bring the verdict, and Morrison suspected it had been written long before today's defense. Get some rest, everyone, Morrison told his team. Tomorrow we find out what they really want from us. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity when Morrison and his team entered for the final session. Alien representatives stood in the aisles when no seats remained. The air hummed with excited conversations in dozens of languages. Morrison could feel the anticipation like electricity in the recycled atmosphere. High Arbiter Zexthal entered with slow, ceremonial steps. Her 6 arms moved in complex patterns as she approached the judge's bench. The courtroom fell silent as she struck her gavel once. This tribunal has deliberated on the charges against humanity. The evidence has been reviewed. The arguments have been heard. It is time for judgment. Morrison sat straight in his chair. Amy Watson gripped her datapad tightly. Dr. Brooks stared at the arbiter with scientific curiosity, as if studying an interesting specimen. Commander Hayes kept his hand near his communicator. Charles Newman looked like a man attending his own funeral on the charge of excessive military expansion, Zexthel began, her voice echoing through the chamber. This tribunal finds humanity guilty. A cheer went up from the alien representatives. Morrison felt his heart sink, but his expression remained calm. On the charge of disruption of established trade routes, this tribunal finds humanity guilty. The cheering grew louder. Some aliens were standing and applauding. Morrison noticed that not all species were celebrating. A few representatives looked uncomfortable with the verdict. On the charge of violation of the Expansion Accords of 2387, this tribunal finds humanity guilty. The courtroom erupted in celebration. Alien voices joined together in what sounded like a victory song. Morrison looked at his team. Amy's face had gone pale. Dr. Brooks was shaking her head in disbelief. The evidence had been clear, but it hadn't. Matter. High Arbiter Zexthel raised all 6 arms for silence. The penalties for these crimes are severe. Humanity will immediately withdraw from all colonies beyond Earth's solar system. All human military vessels will be decommissioned. Reparations in the amount of 50 billion galactic credits will be paid to affected species. Morrison felt the blood drain from his face. 50 billion credits would bankrupt Earth's economy. The withdrawal from the colonies would abandon millions of human civilians to hostile alien forces, but Zexthel wasn't finished. Furthermore, humanity will accept permanent monitoring stations in Earth orbit. Human space travel beyond the solar system will require Council approval. Any violation of these terms will result in immediate military intervention. The arbiter's final words hit Morrison like a physical blow. The human delegation has 72 hours to communicate these terms to Earth Command and return with formal acceptance. Failure to comply will be considered an act of war against the Galactic Council. The gavel struck the bench 3 times. The trial was over. As aliens celebrated around them, Morrison and his team sat in stunned silence. The verdict was worse than their worst fears. It wasn't just punishment. It was the complete destruction of human expansion into space. Counselor Vexmar approached their table. His red eyes glowed with satisfaction. Captain Morrison, I hope you understand the wisdom of the Council's decision. Humanity will learn to accept its proper place in the galaxy. Morrison stood up slowly. And what place is that, Counselor? On Earth, where you belong. Where you cannot threaten the peace and stability of civilized space. Amy Watson gathered her files with trembling hands. This is insane. The evidence clearly showed that humans acted in self-defense. How can they ignore the facts? Vexmar's laugh sounded like grinding metal. Facts are what the Council decides they are, human. Your species has been judged and found wanting. Dr. Brooks looked up at the massive Thraxion. What about the colonies? There are 12 million human civilians living on the frontier worlds. What happens to them? That is not the Council's concern, Vexmar replied. They chose to leave Earth. They can accept the consequences of that choice? Morrison felt rage building in his chest. They're talking about abandoning millions of people to die. I'm talking about justice, Vexmar said. Your species has taken too much too fast. Now you will give it back. The Thraxian walked away, leaving the human delegation alone in the emptying courtroom. Morrison turned to his team. We need to get back to our quarters, now. The walk through the station corridors felt like a funeral march. Aliens stopped to stare at them with satisfaction and contempt. Some made threatening gestures. Others laughed and pointed. Morrison kept his team moving forward. In their quarters, Morrison immediately activated the secure communication system. Admiral Parker's face appeared on the screen, looking hopeful. "Jake, what's the verdict?" Morrison's expression told the story. Before he spoke, "Guilty on all charges. They want us to abandon every colony beyond Earth. 50 billion in reparations. Permanent monitoring of Earth space." Parker's face went white. "Jesus, that's not a punishment. That's the end of human space exploration." "It gets worse," Morrison continued. "We have 72 hours to get Earth's acceptance or they declare war." Parker was quiet for a long moment. "Jake, I have some intelligence that might explain this verdict. Our sources report massive alien fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The Thraxians have positioned battle groups near New Montana and Port Williams. The Kaleri have surrounded the mining colonies in the Vega system." Morrison felt his stomach drop. "They've been planning military action all along." "It looks that way. This trial was just a legal justification for what they intended to do anyway." Amy Watson leaned toward the screen. "Admiral, what's Earth Command's position on the ultimatum?" Parker looked older than Morrison had ever seen him. "Officially, we need time to consider their terms. Unofficially, the President has already made his decision. We're not abandoning 12 million civilians," Commander Hayes spoke up. "What kind of forces are we talking about, Admiral?" "The combined Council fleets have over 3,000 ships. We have maybe 200 vessels that could reach the frontier in time to matter. The odds aren't good." Dr. Brooks had been analyzing data on her pad. "Captain, I've been monitoring Council communications. They're already celebrating victory. Some species are making plans to divide up human territories." Morrison stood up and walked to the small porthole. Outside, he could see alien warships moving into formation around the space station. "They never intended to let us go home peacefully." Charles Newman spoke for the first time since the verdict. "In 30 years of diplomacy, I've never seen anything like this. They're not just afraid of human expansion, they're afraid of human potential." "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. "Think about it. In 200 years, humans went from a single planet to 47 colonies. We adapt faster than any other species. We innovate constantly. We form alliances easily. Some of these alien civilizations have been stagnant for thousands of years." Amy nodded slowly. "They're not punishing us for what we've done. They're trying to stop us from becoming what we might become." Morrison turned back to the communication screen. "Admiral, I need you to send a message to all human colonies. Tell them to prepare for the worst, and I need to know about our contingency plans." Parker's expression was grim. "The plans you're thinking about were classified, but given the circumstances." "Jake, if things go bad, we're ready," Morrison understood. Earth Command had prepared for this possibility. Hidden weapons caches, secret military installations, and emergency protocols that most humans didn't know about. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked. "The Council expects an answer in 72 hours. But our intelligence suggests they'll move sooner if they think we're stalling." Dr. Brooks looked up from her data analysis. "Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures that suggest they're charging weapon systems on the ships around us." "Commander." Hayes checked his own sensors. "Confirmed. We're sitting ducks here." Morrison made his decision. "Admiral, tell Earth Command that we need 12 more hours to prepare our response. Buy us some time. Jake, what are you planning?" Morrison looked at his team. These people had followed him across the galaxy. They had faced down the most powerful court in known space. They deserved to know the truth. "I'm planning to tell them exactly what I think of their ultimatum." Parker's eyes widened. "Jake, if you refuse their terms, then we go to war. But at least we go to war on our terms, not theirs." The communication ended. Morrison sat down heavily in his chair. In 12 hours, he would stand before the Galactic Council again. This time, he wouldn't be defending humanity's past actions. He would be deciding humanity's future. Amy Watson spoke quietly. "Captain, are you really going to reject their ultimatum?" Morrison looked at each member of his team. 12 million people are counting on us. They built homes on those colonies. They raised families. They created new lives among the stars. I won't abandon them to save Earth from a war, Commander Hayes nodded. What are your orders, sir? Morrison stood up. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. In 12 hours, the galaxy is going to learn that humans don't back down when pushed too far. Outside their quarters, alien security forces were taking positions in the corridors. The space station was becoming a prison. But Morrison felt strangely calm. The decision was made. Tomorrow, he would draw a line in the sand that would change the galaxy forever. Captain Morrison walked into the courtroom for the final time. The alien representatives filled every seat, their excitement almost visible in the air. They expected to hear humanity's surrender. They expected to witness the end of human expansion. Into the galaxy, Morrison wore his dress uniform, every medal and ribbon perfectly placed. His team followed behind him, their backs straight and their heads high. Amy Watson carried a single data pad. Dr. Brooks had her scientific scanner. Commander Hayes kept his hand near his sidearm. Charles Newman looked like a man who had made peace with his fate. High Arbiter Zexthel struck her gavel 3 times. This emergency session will now come to order. Captain Morrison, the Galactic Council requires your response to our ultimatum. Does humanity accept the tribunal's judgment and penalties? Morrison stood up slowly. The massive courtroom fell silent. Thousands of alien eyes focused on him as he walked to the speaker's platform. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. Honored Arbiter, Morrison began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, I have consulted with Earth Command. I have reviewed your ultimatum carefully. I have considered what acceptance would mean for the 12 million human civilians living on frontier colonies. Morrison paused, looking around the courtroom. Your ultimatum demands that we abandon our people to hostile forces. It demands that we pay reparations for crimes we did not commit. It demands that we accept permanent servitude to this council. The captain's voice grew stronger. After careful consideration, I have reached my conclusion. Morrison looked directly at High Arbiter Zexthel. You've gone too far. A shocked silence filled the courtroom. Morrison could see confusion and disbelief on alien faces. They had expected surrender, not defiance. You have gone too far in your accusations. You have gone too far in your penalties. And you have gone too far in your arrogance. Morrison activated his datapad. A holographic display appeared above the courtroom, showing military formation, charts and fleet positions. This trial was never about justice, it was about fear. Fear of a species that grows too fast, thinks too freely, and refuses to accept limits imposed by others. The display showed the alien fleet positions around human colonies. While this trial was taking place, your fleets moved into attack positions around our civilian settlements. You planned military action regardless of our response. Counselor. Vexmar stood up angrily. You dare accuse the Council of deception. Morrison turned to face the massive Thraxion. I accuse you of exactly what you are. Cowards and bullies who hide behind legal proceedings while planning murder. The courtroom erupted in angry voices. Some aliens demanded Morrison's immediate arrest, others called for him to be silenced. High Arbiter Zexthel struck her gavel repeatedly. Captain Morrison, you are in contempt of this tribunal. Retract your statements immediately. Morrison ignored the Arbiter and continued speaking. You want to know why you really fear humanity? I'll tell you. It's not because we expand rapidly. It's not because we build strong defenses. It's because we represent change. The captain's voice carried conviction that cut through the alien protests. For thousands of years, your species have maintained the same territories, the same trade routes, the same power structures. You've become comfortable with stagnation. Morrison pointed at the alien representatives. Then humans arrived. In 200 years, we went from a single planet to 47 colonies. We didn't ask permission. We didn't wait for approval. We simply went out and built new worlds. Dr. Brooks stepped forward and activated her scanner. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups in the ships surrounding this station. They're preparing to fire. Morrison nodded but continued speaking. You see, honored council members, we knew this would happen. Human intelligence has been watching your preparations for months. Amy Watson joined Morrison at the platform. We documented your secret meetings, your military buildups, and your plans to eliminate human presence in the galaxy. This trial was just theater. Morrison's voice grew cold. You made one critical mistake. You assumed that because we came here peacefully, we came here helplessly. The captain activated another display showing human fleet positions. While you were positioning your forces around our colonies, we were positioning our forces around your homeworlds. Shocked gasps echoed through the courtroom. The display showed human ships in every major alien system. The numbers were staggering. Commander Hayes spoke clearly. Operation Deep Strike has been in planning for 3 years. Every major alien military installation, every shipyard, every command center is currently targeted by human forces. Morrison watched as panic spread through the alien representatives. You see, we learned something important during our expansion. The galaxy is a dangerous place. So we prepared for the worst while hoping for the best? Charles Newman stepped forward with diplomatic calm. The human government offered a simple proposal to the Council 6 months ago. Mutual non-aggression pacts, fair trade agreements, and joint exploration of unknown space. The Council rejected our offer without discussion. Morrison's final words rang through the silent courtroom. So here we are. You demanded that we abandon our colonies and accept slavery. Instead, we choose to defend our people and our freedom. The captain looked directly at High Arbiter Zexthal. If you want our colonies, you'll have to take them by force. But I promise you, that won't be as easy as you think. Alarms began blaring throughout the space station. Emergency lights flashed red and blue. Amy Watson checked her communicator and nodded to Morrison. Operation Deep Strike has begun, Morrison announced. As we speak, human forces are engaging your fleets throughout the galaxy. You wanted a war, now you have one. Counselor Vexmar's red eyes blazed with fury. You dare threaten the combined might of the Galactic Council? Morrison smiled coldly. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply telling you the facts. Your fleets are under attack. Your communications are being jammed. Your military infrastructure is being systematically destroyed. The captain turned to address the entire courtroom. You made the mistake of thinking that because humans are young, we are weak. You assume that because we seek peace, we cannot fight. You were wrong on both counts. High Arbiter Zexthal was frantically communicating with her staff. Captain Morrison, call off your attacks immediately or face the consequences. Morrison laughed. What consequences? Your fleets are scattered, your command structure is in chaos, you have no leverage left. Dr. Brooks looked up from her scanner. Captain, the ships around this station are powering down their weapons. It looks like they're receiving new orders, Morrison nodded. That would be because their home bases are under attack. It's hard to threaten others when your own house is burning. The captain walked closer to the judge's bench. You wanted to put humanity in its place. You wanted to show us who really rules the galaxy. Well, congratulations, you've succeeded. Morrison's voice carried no anger, only cold determination. You've shown us that there is no justice in your courts, no honor in your treaties, no safety in your peace. So we've decided to make our own rules. Amy Watson received another communication update. Captain, Admiral Parker reports that Phase 1 objectives have been achieved. Enemy fleets are in full retreat in 17 systems. Morrison turned back to the stunned courtroom. Members of the Council, you now face a choice. You can continue this war that you started and watch your civilizations burn, or you can accept new terms for galactic peace. The captain activated one final display showing proposed territory divisions. Humanity claims all space within 50 light years of our existing colonies. We establish mutual defense agreements with any species that want them. And we create new trade routes that benefit everyone, not just the old powers. Morrison looked around the silent courtroom. These are not negotiable demands. They are statements of fact. The galaxy has changed. The old order is broken. A new age has begun. High Arbiter Zextel finally found her voice. This tribunal does not recognize your authority to make such demands. Morrison smiled. You don't have to recognize our authority. But you do have to recognize our strength. And right now, our strength is the only thing standing between you and complete military defeat. The captain gestured to his team. We're leaving now? You have 24 hours to decide whether you want peace or more war. But understand this. Humanity will never again bow to threats from cowards and bullies. Morrison and his delegation walked toward the exit. The alien representative sat in stunned silence, unable to process what had just happened. As they reached the doorway, Morrison turned back one final time. Oh, and one more thing. The next time you want to put humanity on trial, remember this moment. Remember that we came here seeking justice and found only tyranny. And remember that when you push humans too far, we push back. The courtroom doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. In the corridor outside, human Marines waited to escort them to their ship. The war for humanity's future had begun, and Captain Morrison had just fired the first shot with words that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come.